When one of the most famous men on the planet pulled out of a parking garage in Charlotte, North Carolina, and saw a woman sitting alone on the ground next to an empty parking space crying, he did not drive past. He did not slow down, look, and keep moving the way most people do when they see something that would cost them time. He stopped. He put the car in park. He got out. It was a Thursday night, September 21st, 2023, just after 10:47 p.m. The parking garage on South Tryon Street was mostly empty at that hour. The concrete smelled like exhaust and rain. The overhead lights on level 3 buzzed and flickered slightly, the way old fluorescent lights do when they have been running too long. Most of the cars were gone. A few remained near the elevator, belonging to people still inside the arena down the block. Shaquille O'Neal, 7 feet 1 inch tall, 325 pounds, had just attended a charity event at the Spectrum Center. He had stayed longer than planned. Now he was driving himself back to his hotel in a rented black Tahoe that sat lower on its springs than it was designed to. He turned toward the exit ramp on level 3 and his headlights swept across the corner near space. 314, a woman sitting on the concrete floor, back against the wall, knees pulled up to her chest. Head down. Shaq stopped the Tahoe in the middle of the lane. He looked. The woman did not look up. She was not aware of the headlights. She was somewhere else entirely. He pulled forward slightly and parked across 2 empty spaces. He turned off the engine. He got out. His footsteps echoed in the concrete garage. The woman heard them and looked up fast, the way a person looks up when they are alone at night and suddenly hears someone coming. Her eyes were wide. Then she saw how large the figure was, and her expression shifted from fear to something confused, and then to something she could not quite name. She was Sandra Kowalczyk, 47 years old. She worked as an office manager at a dental practice on East Independence Boulevard. She had short brown hair and wore a gray blazer over a black blouse, the kind of professional outfit that means someone had somewhere important to be earlier in the day. Her mascara had come down in 2 thin lines under her eyes. Her phone was gone. Her purse was gone. Her car was gone. She had come to the garage after dinner with a colleague to pick up her car and found an empty space where her silver Honda CR-V had been parked since 5:30 that morning. She had stood there for 2 full minutes looking at the empty space as if looking long enough would make the car reappear. Then she had sat down on the concrete floor because her legs had stopped cooperating. Her phone had been in the car. Her wallet had been in the car. Her house keys had been in the car. The only thing she had was her work ID clipped to her blazer and a $20 bill she had tucked into her blazer pocket that morning for the parking machine, which she had not needed because the machine was broken and the attendant had waved her through. She had no way to call anyone. She had no way to get home. She did not know the phone numbers of anyone in her life by memory because phone numbers lived in phones now and she had not memorized one since 2009. She had been sitting on the floor of level 3 of the parking garage on South Tryon Street for 22 minutes when Shaq's headlights found her. "Are you okay?" Shaq said. His voice in the concrete garage was low and even and surprisingly gentle for a voice that large. Sandra looked up at him. "All the way up, my car was stolen," she said. Her voice was flat. The voice of someone who has already used up their panic and arrived at something quieter on the other side of it. "Do you have your phone?" Shaq asked. "It was in the car. Do you have anyone you can call?" "I don't know any numbers." Shaq nodded once. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He held it out to her. Sandra looked at the phone. She looked at him. "I don't know any numbers," she said again. "I just told you that." And then, inexplicably, she laughed. A small, exhausted, slightly unhinged laugh. The laugh of someone who has passed the point where anything makes sense. Shaq sat down on the concrete floor beside her. All 7 feet 1 inch of him, folding himself down against the wall of a parking garage at 10:52 p.m., his enormous frame making the space look like a child's drawing of a man next to a normal person. Sandra stared at him. "What are you doing?" she said. "Sitting down," he said. "We need to call the police. It'll take them a few minutes to get here. Might as well be comfortable." He dialed 911 on his phone and handed it to her. She reported the stolen vehicle. The dispatcher said a unit would arrive within 15 to 20 minutes. Shaq got the phone back. He dialed the non-emergency line for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department and gave them the garage address and level number and a description of the vehicle Sandra had provided. Then he put his phone back in his jacket. They sat on the concrete floor of level 3. The fluorescent light above them buzzed. Somewhere below, a car on another level started its engine, and the sound moved through the concrete and faded. Sandra looked at the empty space where her car had been. Number 314. She had parked in 314 every Thursday for 3 years because the dental practice validated on Thursdays and the attendant always let regulars through on the south side. Entrance. I had a patient file in the back seat, she said, not to Shaq specifically. Just out loud. I know I'm not supposed to take files home, but Mrs. Abernethy is 91 and she can't come in anymore, and I was going to review her records before her phone appointment tomorrow morning. She paused. Mrs. Abernethy has been a patient at our practice for 40 years. She called me Sandra from the first day. Most patients call me Ms. Kowalczyk, Shaq listened. He did not fill the silence with reassurances. He just listened. My daughter is going to panic, Sandra said. She's 19. She calls me every night at 11. When I don't answer, she assumes the worst. She gets that from her father. Where's her father? Shaq asked. Sandra was quiet for a moment. He passed. 4 years ago, pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end. She said it the way people say things they have said many times. The facts worn smooth from repetition even when the weight of them never changes. After that, Maya, my daughter, she developed a thing about unanswered phones. I always answer. Tonight I can't answer. What's Maya's number? Shaq said. Sandra looked at him. I told you I don't know any numbers. Think, he said. Not unkindly, just directly. You knew her number before you had a smartphone. What was it then? Sandra opened her mouth. She closed it. She looked at the ceiling of the garage. She said very slowly, a 10-digit number. Uncertain at first, then more certain. Shaq dialed it. He handed her the phone. It rang twice. Mom? The voice on the other end was young and immediately alert, the alertness of someone who had been waiting. Sandra closed her eyes. Hi, baby. I'm okay. My phone got stolen with my car. I'm using someone's phone. I'm in the parking garage on South Tryon. I'm okay. A long exhale on the other end. Then, I'll come get you. You don't have to. Mom, I'm coming. Sandra handed the phone back. She looked at the empty space again. She sounds like a good kid, Shaq said. She's the best thing I ever did, Sandra said, simply, without performance. Just a fact. They sat in silence for a while. The garage was very quiet. Somewhere outside, the city made its low, constant noise. Traffic and distant music and the hum of a place that never fully sleeps. Then Sandra said, You look familiar. Shaq said nothing. Are you someone? She said. I'm someone, he said. Most people are. She looked at him sideways. You know what I mean. I do, he said. Does it matter right now? Sandra considered this. No, she said. I suppose it doesn't. They sat for another few minutes. Then Sandra said, Why did you stop? You could have driven past. Most people would have driven past. Shaq thought about this for a moment. He thought about his mother, Lucille O'Neill, who had raised him in the Central Ward of Newark, mostly on her own. Who had walked through dangerous streets at night to get to work and never once asked anyone to stop for her. Who had taught him, not with words but with everything she did, that the measure of a person was whether they stopped. He thought about his stepfather, Sergeant Philip Harrison, who had told him once, Being big means nothing if you don't use it to make someone else feel less small. My mother would have stopped, Shaq said. So I stopped. Sandra looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, like that was the most complete answer she had ever received to any question. The police arrived at 11:09 p.m. 2 officers. They took Sandra's statement. They filed the report. They gave her a case number. They told her the CRV would likely turn up within 48 hours, that most stolen vehicles in Charlotte were recovered, that she should contact her insurance in the morning. They were professional and efficient and gone within 12 minutes. During the police report, one of the officers recognized Shaq and looked at him with wide eyes above his notepad. Shaq gave him a very small shake of his head. The officer looked back at his notepad. He did not say anything. Maya arrived at 11:24 p.m. She was 19, with her mother's brown hair and her father's eyes, and the particular focused energy of a young person who had learned early that some things cannot wait. She came off the elevator at a half-run and stopped when she saw her mother sitting on the concrete floor of a parking garage next to the largest human being she had ever seen in her life. She looked at her mother. She looked at Shaq. She looked back at her mother. "Mom," she said carefully. "Who is this?" "A person who stopped," Sandra said. She stood up slowly, her knees stiff from the concrete. Shaq stood up beside her. Maya had to step back to take in the full height of him. "He sat with me," Sandra said. "While we waited." Maya looked at Shaq. "Thank you," she said. Directly, without fuss. The thank you of someone who meant it completely. "Take care of your mother," Shaq said. "And answer your phone," Maya smiled. "Always." Shaq walked them to Maya's car, a blue Corolla on level 2. He waited until they were inside and the engine was running. He raised one hand. Maya reversed out of the space and drove toward the exit ramp. Sandra looked back once through the window. He was still standing there. She raised her hand. He raised his. Then they were gone. Sandra Kowalczyk did not know who Shaq was until Maya told her in the car on the way home. Maya had recognized him from the moment she stepped off the elevator. She had said nothing because her mother had said he was a person who stopped, and Maya understood that that was the whole story. Sandra called the police department the next morning to follow up on the case. Her CRV was recovered 2 days later in a neighborhood on the east side of Charlotte, unlocked, keys on the seat, Mrs. Abernethy's file still in the back, untouched. She drove it to the detail shop. She drove it home. She parked it in her driveway and stood beside it for a moment before going inside. She never posted about that night on social media. She did not feel that it was hers to share. It belonged to a parking garage at 10:47 p.m. and a buzzing fluorescent light and 2 people sitting on concrete waiting for something to resolve itself. But she did one thing. She wrote a letter. 1 page, handwritten, sent to the Spectrum Center with a note asking if it could be forwarded. She did not know if it would ever arrive. She sent it anyway. It arrived. Shaq read it once. He folded it and put it in his jacket pocket. He did not respond publicly. He did not share it. He carried it with him for 3 weeks before leaving it on his desk at home, where he kept the things that mattered. The letter ended with one sentence. It said, "My daughter wants to know your number in case she ever needs to call someone who stops. Because somewhere right now, there is a parking garage, or a bus stop, or a sidewalk, and there is someone sitting on the ground who has run out of options and out of phone numbers and out of ways to hold it together for 1 more minute. And most people will drive past. Most people will look and keep moving, but some people stop, and the ones who stop learned it from someone. A mother who walked through dangerous streets and never asked anyone to help her. A stepfather who said that being big means nothing if you don't use it. A voice in the back of your head that sounds like the people who raised you and says every time, without fail, stop. That is the story of a parking garage on South Tryon Street, and a woman who didn't know any phone numbers, and a man who sat down on the concrete and waited with her until someone came. Before you go, drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. Charlotte, London, Lagos, Manila, wherever you are, we want to know. We read every single one. If this moved you even a little, hit that like button right now. 1 second. It helps this story reach someone who needs to hear it tonight. Share this with one person. Someone who has been the person on the ground. Someone who needs to know that sometimes people stop. And if you are new here, welcome. Subscribe and tap that bell. Stories like this every single week. Now click on the video on your screen. The next one will stay with you just as long. We will see you there.